Greetings, my fellow freedom lovers and sovereign thinkers. This is LL3's News Podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful swampy mangroves of South Florida. And today's date, Monday, July 31st, 2017. Yes, it is rainy out there. And it's in reference to the tropical storm, the remnants of Tropical Storm Emily, which is, looks like it's going through Tampa. So you folks up there, stay safe and dry. And I know one of the gents from Squeaky's Pizza had to do a little trip all the way up to Orlando. So hopefully we're up there safely, my friend, okay? Enzo, shout out to you. All right, so, and I am at CJ's Java Lounge, located at 400 Southwest 1st Avenue along the New River of Fort Lauderdale, in the Yacht Club Suite 1 to be exact, which is in the realms of the southwest section of the Andrews Avenue Bridge, near the jail and all that. Yeah, some exciting things are happening. And I noticed there was a report that the Judiciary Committee has been asking for another counsel on multiple looks or investigations on Hillary Clinton, Loretta Lynch, James Comey. It could probably even go down to Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And of course, believe it or not, a lot of leaks were coming out. And that includes disclosure on the elections by the DNC, which Bernie Sanders got burnt. So to all you Bernie Sanders supporters, it should be exciting news. So yeah, Lisa Haven did a story on it and had all the links within her on her YouTube account. So this is exciting, but it may take some time as well. So I'm not getting my hopes high. However, everything is coming to light little by little. It doesn't matter if you're a Democrat, Republican, it's all principles, which many of these pieces of trash, I would say, or tyrants, aren't fulfilling their oath of office. Like Loretta Lynch put her under investigation. She earned it because she actually supported a strong cities network, which is part of the One World Order agenda. So you know what? Get these globalist douchebags out. And they get indicted. If they serve time in prison, good, along it's through judicial due process and in good faith. That's it. And you can see this. I have a Facebook, Twitter, and Google Plus accounts. If you want to look that up, I did post it on there. And you could just check it out. Just type in "look like a 3." Sorry about that. Both the one's Roman numeral 3. The other one's number 3 for Twitter and Google Plus. And Facebook is Loki Luck Roman numeral 3. You can follow me on there as well. So I post stuff up there. I put a little some personal things in there once in the blue moon. And I got some good folks on there. Half of my pen pals, half of my friends. And I don't get too detailed because I love using the enemy's tools. Plus, I'll give you the rundown. You can contact me on the other social media sites as well. And you can follow me there, subscribe, and mingle and all that. All right, enough of that. Enough for the small talk. To an extent, let's decide to take a look at Venezuela. And that stuff is still happening over there. They're trying to do regime change, and there's claims the United States is involved. This is by Tony Carlucci. It came out today. It says here, U.S. regime change in Venezuela. The truth is easy if you follow the money. As it reads here, the Venezuelans' ongoing crisis is not driven by political ideology. It is not a battle of battle of socialism versus capitalism or dictatorship versus democracy. It is a result of two center of political powers possessing opposing interests and colliding geopolitically. The nation of Venezuela is currently under control of Venezuelans who derive their support, wealth, and power from Venezuela itself, its people, and its natural resource. This political order also receives aid and support from Venezuela's economic and military partner in the region and around the globe. The opposition opposed to the current political order and seeking to supplant it represents foreign interests, and more specifically the United States and its European allies. That's an interesting synopsis there. So I'm going to add this to my footnotes as well. ConstituteProject.org. I'm going to add the Venezuelan Constitution in there as well, just to give you a clue on how they operate in their government based on their supreme law of the land. All right, and so I'm going to do that right now as we speak. I should have done that originally. Never thought of it, but let me see. Sometimes I just wing it on these articles. I don't even really look at them at time, but just improvise and build from there. So I'll be doing that. And it goes here: the opposition is pro-Washington, not pro-democracy. As early as 2000, the U.S.-backed regime change targeting the Venezuelan president Hugo Chavez sought to violently overthrow Venezuela's political order and replace it with one obedient to Washington. Current leaders of the opposition were not only involved in the 2002 failed coup, many are documented to have received political and financial support from the United States government ever since. This includes several founders of the opposition party, Primero Justicia, which is Justice First, including Leopoldo Lopez, Julio Borges, and Enrique Caprez Rondowski. The latter of the three has been prominently featured in the Western media coverage lately. The U.S. Department documents reveals that the department itself, along with U.S.-funded fronts posing as non-governmental organizations, have been providing Venezuela's opposition with support. This includes a report titled "Status of Caperas and Somate Cases." You can check that link on there when you have the chance. Referring to above-mentioned Enrique Caprez Rondowski and Somate, a U.S. National Endowment for Democracy funded front posing as an election monitor. Currently, NED's own website features an extensive list of activities it is engaged within Venezuela's borders. It includes leverage human rights for political gain, electoral manipulation, building opposition fronts, and expanding pro-opposition media. While each activity is labeled with banging titles, it is clear that none of these activities are done impartially. And as State Department documents reveal, these activities are done specifically for the benefit of the U.S.-backed opposition. Wall Street and Washington's open conspiracy. After the death of Chavez in 2013, a U.S.-based special interest openly conspired to finally overturn the political order he built. Corporate finance and policy think tank, the American Empire Institute, created a checklist of U.S. foreign policy goals it sought to achieve in Venezuela. They include the ouster of narco kingpins who now hold senior posts in government, the respect of a constitutional succession, the adoption of meaningful electoral reforms to ensure a fair campaign environment and a transparent vote count and expected presidential elections, and the dismantling of Iranian Hezbollah's network in Venezuela. Okay. That's interesting there. In reality, AIE is talking about dismantling entirely the obstacles that have prevented the U.S. and corporate financier interests that direct it from installing a client regime and extracting entirely Venezuela's wealth while obstructing, even dismantling, the geopolitical independence and influence achieved by Chavez in Venezuela throughout South America and beyond. Think Tank would continue by stating, now it's time for the U.S. diplomats to begin a quiet dialogue with key regional powers, to explain the higher cost of Chavez's criminal regime, including the impact of Chavistas' complicity with narco traffickers who sell mayhem in Colombia, Central America, and Mexico. Perhaps then we can convince regional leaders to show solidarity with Venezuelan Democrats who want to restore a commitment to the rule of law and to rebuild an economy that can be an engine for their growth in South America. By South Venezuelan Democrats, AIE means proxies created, funded, and directed by Washington, including Primero Justicia and the street mobs and paramilitary units it commands. More recently, another Wall Street, Washington policy think tank, the Brookings Institution, will publish a paper titled Venezuela, A Path Out of Crisis. 5-point plan toward escalating the crisis in Venezuela, emphasis added. 1. The United States could expand its assistance to countries that until now have been dependent on Venezuelan oil, as it means to decrease regional support and for dependence on the Maduro government. 2. The United States could increase monetary assistance to credible civil society organizations and non-governmental organizations, able to deliver food and medicines to Venezuelans. By doing so, the United States should make clear that international pressure aims to support democracy, not punish the Venezuelan people. 3. The United States could support efforts by the opposition in Venezuela to build an off-ramp that would split moderate elements of the government away from hardliners, encouraging the former to esquisite to a transition to democracy by lowering their cost of exiting government. 4. The United States could coordinate with international institutions such as the International Monetary Fund to offer financial incentives for holding free and fair elections in 2018 and for the opposition to unify and compete in those elections. Such coordination would involve developing and publicizing a credible plan to restart Venezuela's economy. You get that right now. Okay, these global institutions are trying to tell a country what to do. And I love it, especially when it comes to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF. They're the banksters' whore bags, okay? They're just bankster demonods. They control everybody. And this is why, like I told folks for a very long time, we got to denounce the IMF and the World Bank. Burn their damn buildings to the ground symbolically or evict them. That's the other way of saying it. Out of our country, the United States. Because they are completely one blasphemous organization. So now we'll proceed. The 5, as a last resort, the United States should consider one moment here. I just hit the wrong button by accident. 5, as a last resort, the United States could consider raising economic costs to the government through an expanded sanctions regime that aims to limit Venezuelan earnings from oil exports and block further financing. Yeah, it means let's do a declaration of war. Woo! How splendid. This policy is risky, given that Maduro government will be able to add more credibly shift blame for economic crisis onto the United States and should be accompanied by well-publicized efforts to deliver humanitarian aid through credible civil society and non-governmental organizations. While the Western media attempts to frame Venezuela's crisis as a result of socialism and dictatorship, it is clear by reading the West's own policy papers that is owed instead to a systematic assault on Venezuela's social political stability and economic viability spanning decades. Okay, so this is like nothing really new in those areas, and you can read it. So you can read the papers yourself. So it's like very interesting here. And while the Western, I already said that, Venezuela is not the first nation in South America that the United States has sought to overturn by undermining its economy. Within the CIA's own online archives, under the section titled CIA Activities in Chile, that's admitted in the 1970s, similar statistics were used to undermine and overturn the government of Chile. It states specifically, according to a Church Committee report and their meeting in the CIA, Director Richard Helms and Attorney General John Mitchell On 15 September 1970, President Nixon and his national security advisor, Henry Kissinger, murdering New World Order piece of crap, direct the CIA to prevent Adlin from taking power. They were not concerned about the risks involved, according to Helms' notes. In addition, political action to Nixon and Kissinger, according to Helms' notes, ordered steps to make the economy scream. These Cold Wars attitudes persisted into the Pinochet era. After Pinochet came to power, senior policymakers appeared reluctant to criticize human rights violations, taking to task U.S. diplomats, urging greater attention to the problem. U.S. military assistance and sales grew significantly during the years of the greatest human rights abuses. According to a previous released memorandum of conversation, Kissinger in June 1976 indicated that the U.S. government was sympathetic to his regime, although Kissinger advised some progress on human rights in order to improve Chile's image in U.S. Congress. Considering America's extensive list of interventions, wars, and occupations, it is currently involved in worldwide in the manner in which each was presented to the public, with ideology and humanitarian concerns used to manipulate public perception, and considering Venezuela's opposition is a documented recipient of U.S. support, and it is clear that yet another intervention is underway, this time in South America. So, it's a little past history, and if I recall, too, they did a bombing in Chile on September 11th, 1973. It was considered, I think it's called Operation Condor. I could be mistaken. But folks, you got to definitely look that up yourselves when you have that chance. It is very powerful stuff. And so, very powerful stuff. So I'm going to do that, and yeah, I'm going to add the Venezuela Constitution. It's been done. So I will proceed here. Unipolar versus multipolar. In the world moving toward multipolarism and greater decentralization at all levels, Venezuela's collapse and the victory for Washington would undo an increasingly balanced distribution of geopolitical power, both in South and Central America as well as across the world. As a major oil company producing nation, U.S. control over its people and natural resources would further allow the U.S. and its allies to manipulate energy prices toward achieving future goals, particularly in terms of encircling, isolating, and dismantling other centers of political power dependent on oil production for economic prosperity. One needs not to be a fan of socialism to understand that the ultimate outcome of Venezuela's collapse will be further concentration of power in Washington, D.C. and Wall Street's hands. Such power, regardless of whatever ideology is superficially welded behind, will always be abused. Regardless of the alleged form of government a nation may take, as long as a step away from unipolar globalization is a step in the right direction. The crisis in Venezuela is not one of socialism versus capitalism or dictatorship versus democracy. It is one of hegemony versus national sovereignty, or of centralized unipolar power versus an increasingly multipolar world. A sovereign and independent Venezuela allows it to pursue its own destiny is the one in which its own people will naturally to seek to decentralize and distribute power, while the current government may not provide the ideal conditions to accomplish this. Conditions under a U.S. client regime, as U.S. wrecked Libya, Afghanistan, or Iraq proved, will be significantly less ideal. But geopolitical analysts moving away from ideological talking points and examining the actual government and opposition, their interests, associations, and funding, as well as their base motives, reveals as a much simpler and consistent narrative, one that any analyst could discern, and a discernment that will stand to the test of scrutiny and time. Those entrenched in the left-right ideology risk being betrayed by the government's floundering desperation and the true nature of opposition that most certainly is not capitalist or pro-democracy. Yep, very interesting article. I gotta give them credit for this too, because this is one of the areas people really need to pay attention to. When you go around entangling on other countries' affairs, it will blow back in your faces. It's like a CIA plot, and you know how when the CIA's hands get their hands dirty, it smells like cow manure. All right, it's been going on for a very long time, and the people in Venezuela need to make the decision on what they want, what's their destiny. We shouldn't tell other countries what to do, and our tax dollars shouldn't be extorted to overthrow their government. We should honor their constitution, their ways of doing things, because hey, it wouldn't be like people wouldn't like it if Venezuela came over here going to tell us how to live and how to think and how to wipe our butts. That's called foreign influences, interfere in a new republic. Well, John Jay wrote that in Federalist Papers 2 through 5. It's like when Israel try to tyrannical elements in the Israeli government. I'll make that more clearly. Is that try to tell us how to think or how to fight for their wars, and that is absolutely wrong as well. So some people, you're against Israel. I said, no, I got to talk real slow to some people. I talk about rogue governments and criminal elements, not just Israel as a whole. But they all assume I'm against Israel because I was critical of certain things, criminal elements in the government. But that's okay, right? Please stop assuming. If you don't know if you don't want to talk to me, don't. Plain and simple. But the one thing you have to look at, which I'm going to add to the footnotes again, and I know I've done it before, but for the folks who listened to me the first time, I am going to add the Venezuelan Constitution, which is a Bolivarian republic. They can put that in there, so you can at least really have a clue. It says here in Article 1, independence, under paragraph 2 of Article 1, fundamental principles, independence, liberty, sovereignty, immunity, territorial integrity, and national self-determination are unrenounceable rights of the nation. So I will let that in there. And plus, I have done it before. I'll do it again, which is considered Venezuela Defense Human Rights of Civil Society Act of 2014, how the United States can get involved in Venezuela's affairs, especially in the propaganda and extra stuff, which President Obama signed into a law. So, yes, we can. Let's give you guys an example. Try to tell me how great President Obama was. You're in a wet dream, my friends. So, I'm going to add that to the footnotes. And like I tell everyone, hope for the best for the Venezuelan people, regardless what side they want. And the truth of the matter is, the United States should not get involved in anyone's affairs. It's been happening with the CIA for a very long time. And some of these folks, they try to tell me the other way and so forth because they watch it on some damn idiot or read it in some lamestream newspaper without going a little bit further. They watch the idiot box to get all their information. You're wasting your time. I'm not saying I'm better than you, but take the initiative on looking at everything across the board. So, and I will be right back. Okay, so the next one I'll be addressing here, activist posts. A lot of his sites are activist posts, but they came from other multiple sources. And this one here came from the Free Thought Project by Rachel Blevins. Right? Blevins? Excuse me. Sorry there, Rachel. Sorry about that. And this one's entitled, What Picking Up Trash in a Police State Looks Like. Man slapped by police for improperly cleaning a river. This came out July 30th. And she wrote here, in Columbus, Georgia, 2 college students learned the hard way that life in the police state often includes unnecessary interrogation, false accusations, and citation for victimless crimes, even when the suspect in question were helping to clean up the community. YouTubers Brandon Jordan and Tristan Yapchenko Both students at Columbus State University were interrupted by police while they were filming what they refer to as a river treasure video. This consisted of Jordan and Yap Tenko diving into a local river and recovering the objects they found at the bottom. Sometimes unique finds and sometimes pieces of trash that they removed from the river. Jordan told Free Thought Project that he and his friends have gained a reputation in the community for helping clean up while featuring their adventures on YouTube. We all do the river treasure videos in the river where we always clean up lures, nets, bundles, a fishing line, and anything we find on the bottom of the river, Jordan said. So we are always cleaning it up. Everyone down there knows, sorry about that, from our YouTube channels and how do we do a lot of good publicity for the city. Well, I'm not sure if it really covers it in the video, but myself, Jake, and Tristan all do river treasure videos in the river that we are always cleaning up lures, nets, bundles, a fishing line, and anything we find on the bottom of the river. So we are always cleaning up. Everyone down there knows from our YouTube channels and how we do a lot of good publicity for the city. So that's also why at one point in the video I said as much as we do for the city. While in the water, Jordan and Yap Tenko were interrupted by a police officer who was calling to them from the edge of the river and demanded that they meet him on land. The men complied, and when they did reach the officer who was patrolling the area on his bicycle, he began asking them about their knowledge of the law. Are you guys familiar with code sections that cover swimming in the river with flotation devices? The officer inquired. When he asked the two men he had any ID on them, Jordan and Tenko replied and said that their driver's licenses were in the truck they traveled in, which was in a nearby parking garage. The officer then responded and said, well, I'm going to both issue you guys a citation. When Jordan inquired what the citation was for, officer said it was a code violation of 1445, which would have meant that Jordan was receiving a citation for not wearing a life jacket. However, Jordan knew that he had, in fact, been wearing a life jacket the entire time, and it's clearly documented in the video. In response, the officer said, no, you didn't have that on, sir. Jordan still stood his ground and insisted that the camera he and Yap Tenko were using to film the underwater video showed that he was wearing a life jacket at the time they were approached by their officer. In response, the officer insisted that he had no documentation of the encounter on the police issued by the camera he was wearing. When Jordan began questioning the logic behind the officer's claim that Jordan was not wearing a life jacket when he was in the water, and then he magically had the time to find one and put on as he and Yap Tenko approached the shore. The officer changed his strategy and began directly talking to Yap Tenko, who was not wearing a life jacket. Jordan continued to question the officer, who insisted that the only way he would not issue Jordan a citation was if he reviewed the footage from his body camera and saw that Jordan was in fact wearing the same life jacket the entire time. What I do for you? Okay, I turned my camera on, and when I walked over here, the officer said, and it shows that on, you won't get a citation. Plain and simple. You got a camera and I got a camera. If my camera shows that you had that on, then you're good. So I'm guilty till proven innocent, Jordan replied. This is incredible. As much as we do for the city, and you're going to give me a hard time about this when I clearly have this on. The officer proceeded to justify the encounter by insisting that Yap Tenko needed a citation because he was not wearing a life jacket, even though Jordan was wearing a life jacket, which the officer criticized because both the jacket and the shirts underneath were black. The officer went on to threaten Jordan by saying that he ever caught him without a life jacket, he will receive a citation. I know, I was watching the video. It was hilarious, by the way. Jordan said Yap Tenko now owes a $250 fine from the citation he received for swimming in the river without a life jacket. As the Free Thought Project has documented on numerous occasions, the police state is alive and well in the U.S., and police often waste their time pursuing victims' crimes, such as issuing citations to children who are ready to eliminate stand without a permit in California, or children who are mowing lawns without a permit in Alabama. In case of Jordan and Yatanko's River Treasure filming adventure, which substituted as a trash cleanup, it could be argued that if they had chosen not to wear life jackets and they had encountered trouble in the river, they will have to face the consequences for their own actions. As for officers who questioned them, it could not be argued that he had better things to do with taxpayers-funded time. Exactly. It's called a babysitting thing. And you know what I said? Great cheers for the Deputy of Nottingham. Flush. Absolutely. So, and the video was hilarious. It was like you actually see him cleaning up, debris and so forth. And the cop claimed Jordan hadn't have a vest on, which he did. So, but the whole thing is very time consuming, and the two gentlemen were actually swimming together, so it wasn't like they were on their own. I do find this humorous. I'm like, to the city of Columbus, Georgia, are you trying to get a budget to collect revenue for your town? Wow, wow, wow. That's a real shame when you got to do things half-assed like the rest of the herd conformists in the political realm within the United States of all these towns. Boss hogs and the mafiosos, all right? Watch the video. It is interesting, but I had to get a good laugh. So the Deputy of Nottingham does it again. Yeah, hey, honey, I wrote someone a ticket today. Does that turn you on? Oh, yeah, I think it's fantastic, dear. Please. Thumb down and proud, right? Absolutely. Well, you know what? It's nothing new. Hopefully they could beat the case and they could tell him to stick it. All right? Yes, right. All right, so next one will be coming up here. There's interesting news. This one here is from Jay Sarapoulos. If I'm correct, he's from Free Thought Project as well, if I'm correct. I could be enlightened here. Yep, Free Thought Project as well. And this one here is about largest sex trafficking ring in the U.S. busted, child openly sold in plain sight. It happened in Los Angeles, California. Report of missing teenager in Tulare, County, California in late 2016 culminated into the uncovering of one of the largest sex trafficking ring in the western United States, according to an announcement by Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department on Thursday. 13 women and girls, including the missing teen, were free from captivity as a result of the extensive investigation. Missing teenager's disappearance and subsequent discovery in the West Hollywood apartment in January led investigators in the LA Sheriff's Department to discover an extensive human sex trafficking network that extended from Nevada to California. During the course of the investigation, detectives discovered that the ring used apartments as brothels in dozens of communities, including Burbank, West Hollywood, and Las Vegas. Years ago, a human trafficking case of this magnitude was not likely, Los Angeles County Sheriff Jim McDonald said in a news conference in downtown. We knew the more we looked, the more we would find. According to a report by Los Angeles Daily News, the 6-month investigation by Tulare County Sheriff's Department, Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, and Los Angeles Regional Human Trafficking Task Force and the California Department of Justice has just led to 2 arrests so far. Quentin Brown, 30, of Highland, and Gerald Turner, 32, of Fresno, were arrested on suspicion of 54 charges relating to sex trafficking, pimping, pondering, grand theft, and identity theft. The complaint filed Wednesday by the California Attorney General's office alleged that Brown lured victims from the West Central Valley as far back as in October and trafficked them throughout the state. Investigators also said that 13 victims included 8 minors who were sold for commercial sex. A 2017 Maserati Ghibli, a 2017 Maserati Levante, and a Porsche Panamera were all confiscated by investigators, were used in the ring and obtained through fraudulent means. 8 people were victims of identity theft. 16 sites across California and Nevada were used as brothels as part of the ring. Mia McNeil, who police believe ran the apartment brothels, remains at large, according to McDonald. Additionally, law enforcement believes she also leased high-end luxurious vehicles to transport the sex slaves, without reasoned suspicion. McDonald said that detectives uncovered that Brown and Turner would traffic the victims in plain sight, using the internet to advertise women they were attempting to sell. They were young as 15 years old, bought and sold for commercial sex, according to McDonald. Surprisingly, most victims of sex trafficking and born and raised in the U.S. At the news conference, California Attorney General Xavier Becerra said 72% of victims found in California said they are American. Human trafficking, which includes sex and labor trafficking, is one of the fastest growing crimes in the world. Its reach is not limited to foreign countries, Becerra said. In California, human trafficking is reported here in our state more than in any other. Law enforcement said investigation is ongoing as they attempt to uncover and arrest the individuals who solicit young women and teenage sex slaves. The predators online they are looking for an 11-year-old. These people are not the traditional Johns that most people think of, McDonald said. They are predators. They are child molesters that are out there taking advantage of some of the most vulnerable in society. The Los Angeles Daily News reports that since the Los Angeles Regional Trafficking Task Force was established in 2015, there have been 697 arrests, and those about 30% were male buyers. Interesting. In addition, there have been 185 victims rescued, a majority of them youths who were sex trafficked. Tulare County Sheriff Mike Rodriguez, says he has since met with one of the victims rescued, and she has received help and is back in school. But he implored parents to watch their children carefully, especially while they are on their mobile phones. To the parents, be vigilant, Brodeur said during the press conference. Pay attention to what your children are doing online. Social networking is a environment for predators to prey on and exploit the innocence of children. Of course, when even those tasked with protecting children, such as Raymond Liddy, 53, a California Deputy Attorney General, are arrested on charges of possessing child pornography, who is left to actually look out for the welfare and the safety of their children. In addition to being a California state prosecutor, Liddy is the son of a prominent Watergate figure, G. Gordon Liddy, who was an operative in the President Nixon's campaign attempt to burglarize the Democratic National Committee. Raymond Liddy was arrested at his home and was charged in federal court with possessing images of minors engaging in sexually explicit conduct. According to federal court documents obtained by Heavy, he was subsequently released from custody and placed on home detention with GPS monitoring after posting a $100,000 bond during his arraignment. Even after taking down one of the largest human trafficking rings on the West Coast, there is virtual certainty that this bust only barely scratches the surface. When high-level officials tasked with prosecuting those that break the law are accused of being ones preying upon the innocent and weakest in society, it makes one seriously question who is actually looking out for the victims. Please share this story in an effort to raise awareness about the extreme scope of this constant and pervasive societal problem of the sexual trafficking of children. And Jay is absolutely correct. And I do recall Donald Trump did an executive order on that to really make it more thorough. It is in there on whitehouse.gov. Look it up. I did a podcast on that too. And like I said, areas I may be critical of, but others I will give people in the political realm a thumbs up, including the police officers that are doing these investigations. I give them kudos too. So that's why I may be critical, but it's not in its entirety, because you got folks out there that they don't want to see it's happening to their own kids. And this is gut-wrenching when you look at this. People getting taken advantage of, and at least most of them are Americans. Because even with the immigration issue, a lot of these folks, undocumented folks, illegal aliens, are being used as sex slaves. So you have to see that as well. It affects everyone around the world. So this is just gotta keep plugging away, spread this message, because these sons of bitches that are involved need to be shut down completely and never see the day of light. So, next one here is interesting what's going on in Europe. Came out yesterday, Claire Burnish, and says here, EU proposes freezing bank accounts to bail out megabanks. After nervous customers panic and drain their accounts, ultimately causing the collapse of the Spanish bank Banco Popular. Equally jittery European Union officials are debating the merits of freezing assets, preventing anyone from withdrawing any money at the first sight of a bank run. Proponents claim measures to halt a rush of withdrawals would prevent the downfall of floundering financial institutions at their most vulnerable point, in hopes of starving off a catastrophe as at least harrowing as that of 2008, while detractors admonishing the move might have precisely the opposite effect, with investors rushing to yank funds at the slightest indication of trouble. The desire is to prevent a bank run, so that when a bank is in critical situation and is not pushed over the edge, a familiar person with German government thinking told Reuters, giving supervisors the power to temporarily block bank accounts at alien lenders is a feasible option. A paper prepared by the Estonian presidency of the EU said, acknowledging that member states were divided on the issue. Reuters report. EU countries which already allow moratorium on bank payouts and insolvency procedures at national levels like Germany support the measure, officials said. A cursory autopsy of last month's Banco Popular failure had economic officials scrambling to figure out how to best prevent a similar financial debacle. But the idea of cutting customers' access to their own funds when conditions warrant the blast part of Pandora's box of potentialities, all favoring the state and banking industry over individual customers, while officials contend cutting off account access would theoretically prevent a bank already in distress from going under when scores of people withdraw money at once. A proposal toes that fraud, but Scaro can't. The line blocking government overreach from private individual finance. According to the Estonian paper pursued by Reuters, an additional measure proposed the development of a mechanism whereby customers in a situation could withdraw at least limited amounts of funds. We strongly believe that this would incentivize depositors to run from a bank at an early stage. Charlie Bannister of the Banking Lobby Group, Association for Financial Markets in Europe, told Reuters, alluding to the possible whiplash effect described above. The envoys of the European Union originally discussed these withdrawals restrictions on July 13th, when further talks set for September, but lawmakers would have to concur before any variant of the plan could be put in place, continues Reuters. The plan, if agreed, will contrast with legislative proposals by the European Commission in November that aim to strengthen supervisors' powers to suspend withdrawals must exclude from the moratorium insured depositors, which under EU rules are below €100,000 or $117,000. Under the plan by EU states, payouts could be suspended for 5 working days and the block could be extended to a maximum of 20 days in exceptional circumstances, the Estonian document said. Existing EU rules allow a 2-day suspension from saying payout by failing banks, but a moratorium does not include deposits. In fact, only just now have insured deposits debuted as a target for the withdrawal moratorium, as authorities previously felt such a move may have a negative impact on a market confidence. Nevertheless, economic banking troubles have hit several European nations. in recent years, such as Cyrus fiasco as described by Bitcoinists. Back in 2013, Cyprus banking crisis was hair breadth away from a total economic collapse. Cypriot banks were desperate for a bailout from the EU and the IMF. Many account holders fear that their deposits would vanish. This fear caused a classic bank run, and people were rushing to banks and ATMs in order to withdraw as much money as they could. Invariably, cash became scarce, and the ATM stopped working. Many saw Bitcoin as a last option to secure their funds, which severely curtailed faith in Western and central banking institutions, as that European Union insiders would look first to penalize customers for banks' poor planning and managed in the midst of theoretical future crisis, typifies the impetus for throngs of people riding the tumultuous cryptocurrency wave as far away from big banks as possible, considering officials now hope to revoke access to bank accounts at perhaps the time customers would most indeed. The marriage of state and finance obviates how insignificant the needs of the so-called little guy when the government only sees only green. Well, sometimes the Ponzi scheme continues. When you have banksters trying to run the world, they want to take advantage of working class people. So I always recommend the folks out there around the world, don't just leave all your eggs in one basket financially. Just have hard currency. If you're going to do crypto, it may have its pros and cons. I say that I respect. Just don't put it all in one area. Put a small amount there just to be on the safe side, etc. This is really insane. When you have the World Bank, the IMF knows best. They want to treat us and enslave us and say, you don't earn this money. We own you. That's like part of Hamilton's curse. And I know the small banks, local banks over there probably say, hey, we'll do business with you. You don't need these SOBs. But the whole thing is just a real shame. So, folks, please, I always beseech, don't leave everything in one area. All right. Well, speaking of the sanctions everyone's talking about, the nationalinterest.org, it says here the U.S. sanctions bill is a win for Russia. And this is by Angela Stant, came out a few days ago. U.S. sanction bill designed to hurt Russia may have unintended consequences for the United States. The surprise about the Russian Foreign Ministry announcement of Russian sanctions on U.S. diplomats and embassy properties is that they did not come sooner. The usual practice during the Cold War and after was that any diplomatic expulsion on either side was met with symmetrical response. Indeed, in December, after the Obama administration expelled 35 Russian diplomats and closed down 2 embassy compounds to punish Russia for its interference in the 2016 election, Foreign Minister Lavrov appeared the next day on television brandishing a list of 35 American diplomats whom he advised President Putin to expel. But Putin surprised the world by announcing, while we reserve the right to take a reciprocal measures, we're not going to downgrade ourselves to the level of irresponsible kitchen diplomacy. Clearly, the Kremlin believed that once President Trump took office, sanctions would be rescinded and relations would improve. So why not be magnanimous? 7 months later, after a bilateral presidential meeting in Hamburg that appeared to signal in the beginning of the normalization of relations, the prospects for an improved relationship are as dim, if not dimmer, as they were last December. The United States will now have to reduce its diplomatic staff in Russia by 60% to comply with the Russian sanctions. The downturn in relations is largely for domestic reasons on both sides. The incessant stream of investigations into ties between the U.S. president's family and close advisors and different Russian individuals, plus the 2016 election has made Russia a toxic subject in Washington, D.C. It is an unusual alliance between the congressional Republicans and Democrats. The Senate passed by 98-2, and I'll let you know the 2 that voted against it was Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky and Senator Bernie Sanders from Vermont. A bill codifying expanding existing sanctions, which were initially imposed under the Obama after the annexation of Crimea by executive order, because they want to remove from Trump the ability to lift these sanctions unilaterally. Congress would now have to approve any modification of the sanctions regime. This kind of legislation is a blunt instrument. Once passed, as the history of the 1974 Jackson-Vanik Amendment shows, it remained in place for 38 years. It will probably stay on the books for longer than necessary and remove the flexibility and leverage the president could have in dealing with Russia. Domestic factors also influence Russia's response. Russian nationalism has become a potent force. Putin faces a re-election in March, and while his popularity remains high, his appeal rests largely on his foreign policy accomplishments, showing that Russia is a respected world power, that he is a strong leader. The initial euphoria in some Russian circles that under Trump and Kremlin, the Kremlin and the White House would enter into a new, friendly, pragmatic relationship has evaporated. Putin may feel that he has to demonstrate that Russia cannot continue to respond passively to receive insults from the United States. The irony, of course, is that Russia has brought this upon itself through the actions in Ukraine and during the U.S. election campaign. So there's a big claim on that. Irony, of course, right? U.S. sanction bill designed to hurt Russia may have unintended consequences for the United States. As currently written, it will not only continue to penalize Russia, but will also penalize American and European businesses because of its restrictions on energy projects that involve Russian companies. Specifically, the bill seeks to prevent the construction of the Nord Stream 2 as gas pipelines that would export Russian gas under the Baltic Sea and to Europe. That's like under the sea, under the Baltic Sea. A little bit risky there, I would say, right? Germany supports the pipeline as the most cost-effective way to meet future gas demand, as do most, but certainly not all of its EU partners. Jean-Claude Juncker, president of the European Commission, has warned that the sanction bill could have unintended unilateral effects that impact the EU's energy security interests. He added that if our concerns are not taken into account sufficiently, we stand ready to act appropriately within a matter of days. Moreover, German officials, echoed by Russians, have suggested that real agenda behind the sanctions is a boost to U.S. natural gas exports to Europe. Some EU officials have warned that the EU may rethink its own sanctions regime, carefully designed with the Obama administration. If the United States moves forward with this bill, this, of course, would be good news for the Kremlin. The latest Kremlin action may herald the beginning of a new series of sanctions and counter-sanctions by both sides. Russia and America may still be able to work together in Syria, but that may be one of the few remaining areas of cooperation. If so, U.S.-Russian relationship could continue to deteriorate before it starts to improve, and with the current Washington euphoria, that could take a long time. Nothing new at all. But one thing I have to say, this is why I just laugh at these sanctions, and I'm not being lovey-dovey about Vladimir Putin. Okay, I'll just let you folks know that when it comes to government, I'm vigilant towards all of them, regardless. And it is disturbing because I did let my elected servants know that you want to support these sanctions. If we go to war with Russia, Iran, or North Korea, I want their rear ends in the front line. Every single one of them that supported HR 3364. That may be it, the sanctions bill.